I work with a lot of different processes when making my art. It's one of the things I like about my practice. I get to find the right match between an idea and the medium that can express the idea the best. As fun as it is to explore a lot of art practices, there is a slight downside. There are times I think I remember how to do an art process that I don't actually remember. I'm planning to use block printing for my 2027 calendar project. Check out the videos linked below if you want to see where I started and the progress I'm making. I've made block prints before using Speedy Carve or Ready Cut blocks. These kind of blocks are great for people like me who have a harder time carving linoleum or wood. I have the tools I need: pencil, tracing paper, speedball carving set, a brayer, and an inking plate, along with my small press. And I have the supplies: speedball or Akua ink, and assorted cardstock. I even have some ink extender to adjust translucence levels and ink retarder to slow down how quickly the ink dries. I figured I was all set. I'm going to take you through what I did and all the questionable decisions I made along the way. While I struggle to pull on these gloves, I'd really appreciate you liking this video and subscribing. It really helps the channel reach other folks who might be interested in these kinds of projects. Looks like I'm almost done with the gloves. Let's get into it. I cut down a larger speed cut block and used tracing paper to transfer a few of the patterns I created for the calendar project. I wanted to test how well my carving tool would capture the details of these patterns. The carving part went pretty smoothly, and I think this tool works fine for these two patterns. Then I got to this pattern, and I realized the carving tool was making lines that were too thick. So I had an idea. I would run an experiment and use my engraving needle, which I typically only use on intaglio plates. It would be very cool if I could get super fine lines on speed cut blocks using the needle. After carving all those tiny pluses with the needle, here's what the block looked like. I was ready to print. I planned to use my small press, the way I had with Tetra Pak plates. The press can do block prints as well, but there is a big difference in the height of the plates. While the speed cut block I'm using is pretty thin, it isn't nearly as thin as the Tetra Pak. Here's the Tetra Pak plate under the blankets, and here's the speed cut block under the blankets. I remembered that the press blankets could get worn down if I ran the press over a taller block like this, so to protect the blankets, I swapped them for 2 pieces of cardboard. It wasn't the smoothest print I've pulled, but I got it through. Here's the result. The first 2 patterns look sharp, but the tiny pluses I carved in with the engraving needle, not so much. My experimenting spirit wasn't deterred, however. What if I could get the speed cut block to act a little like an intaglio plate to hold ink in these tiny lines? I went ahead and wetted down 1/3 of my paper with water and blotted off the excess. By the way, this super quick method worked surprisingly well to dampen the paper. Then I inked up the full block, wiped away a lot of the ink on the tiny plus pattern, and cranked it through the press. I'll give myself a point or 2 for creativity, but it didn't really work. Here's what I got. There's more of the pattern visible than there probably should be, but this technique didn't yield good results. And there is another issue. You see these lines in the print? That's from the corrugated cardboard I was using instead of the blankets. I hadn't considered that the ridges of the cardboard's corrugation would become visible on the second run through the press, after getting smushed down during the first run. By the end of all this, I realized that maybe I didn't remember as much about block printing as I thought I did. So here are some of the things I learned, or had to relearn. First, and most obviously, if I want to do fine line detail with Intaglio tools and techniques, I shouldn't use speed cut blocks. I should use plates, either Tetra Pak or copper or zinc. While cardboard might help preserve my press blankets when using speed cut blocks, I would need to use a denser type of cardboard than this kind, so I could get more than one smooth print run out of it. When I was carving the block, a way to keep the ends of the lines looking a little sharper was to carve the length of the line in one direction, then turn the block and carve out the other end of the line from the other direction. I got this beginner speedball carving tool set ages ago, and it worked great for these patterns. I was surprised at the level of detail I could get with it. When preparing the ink, I need to use a lot more ink extender compared with the colored ink in the mix to get the transparency I want to layer colors for the calendar designs. I didn't remember how long it takes to roll the ink with the brayer so that the consistency of the ink changes from slippery to tacky and smooth. It does take a while, and it really improves the evenness of the ink application. I also needed to be sure to roll the ink on the block in 2 to 3 different directions to get good coverage. Here's the press bed setup I will be using for block printing now, with extra pieces of speed cut block to protect the blankets and keep the top edge of the cardstock from getting bent when going through the press. So those are the key things I need to remember as I dust off my wobbly block printing skills. If you have any tips or suggestions for improving my next round of printing, let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for being here. And if you've made it this far, I'd truly appreciate you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. That way you can be the first to know what else I figure out as I work on my projects this year. See you in the next one.